Now that is what I'm talking about. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host as always, Clint McLean. This week, we are rolling straight over to California. The UFC moves on to Sacramento for a really underrated fight card. Coming off of the high that is UFC 239, a lot of people have been kind of shitting on this card, but I gotta be honest with you. This is one of those ones that I love. It's lacking in name value, but it is not lacking in good action matchmaking. I am really looking forward to a lot of the fights on this one, and we've got a lot of really close lines, which that makes it really fun for sports betting as well, because we can find some value spots here. We don't have to lay quite as much juice if we like a fighter. It's also really volatile, which y'all know I love, so let's get right into this. First and foremost, thank you all for the love and support I've been receiving. I've got a whole bunch of new subscribers over there on YouTube. Don't think I haven't noticed. Shout out to all of my new followers over on YouTube. I love you guys. Thank you for joining the podcast. Diehards, where you at? Everybody on Twitter giving me a follow over here. We are up to 1,200 followers, and I am loving that. The interaction, the back and forth has been really great, so I love the positivity. That's been something that you all know I've been doing from the beginning of this thing. I want positive love back and forth. You know, if we want to talk about sports, if we want to talk about fights and betting, we are allowed to disagree, but it doesn't mean we got to be dicks to each other. So I'm glad everybody is staying positive and getting along. The best thing about this week is we are coming off of a nice, solid winning weekend of MMA action. UFC 239 was really good to us. Let's start the episode off with a quick recap. I was gonna do a full recap episode for everybody because there is just so much that happened at UFC 239. I really felt like it needed its own episode. Unfortunately, this thing called real life happened to me, and I didn't get a chance to record all that for you on Sunday, so I do apologize for that. We're gonna have to go with the condensed version this week, but in the future, I will definitely be trying to do recap episodes for everybody, especially on the really good fight cards, because some of them just damn well deserve it with all the stuff that goes on. But let's jump in. I was super disappointed kicking our betting night off. We lost our very first pick of the night. We had Chance Rencounter and Ismail Nurmagomedov does not go to a 3-round decision at -110, and oh boy, I thought that line was off. I thought we had snuck one over on the bookies because I saw no way in hell that that fight went a full 3 rounds, and if you all watched that fight, you know damn well how close we were to catching that bet. Ismail completely blasted Rencounter in the first round and even caught some in the third round, and Rencounter just does not cover his chin. That's what I talked about in the breakdown. Rather than taking Ismail inside the distance, I was just betting on the fact that Rencounter's chin wasn't going to hold up. And if Rencounter's chin did hold up and he had a grappling advantage, I thought he was going to get it done on the ground. And you know what? What the hell? I was on Twitter all over about this one. I was baffled because first off, Rencounter's chin is ungodly. I don't know how it held up. The shots that he took would have KO'd anybody else at least 3 times over the course of that fight. It was ridiculous. So then Ismail slows down and Rencounter actually manages to have a grappling advantage. And I thought, okay, well, that's a little crazy. And that kind of sucks for us because he's just going to grind out a win here. But no, he started attacking with submissions. He started attacking with ground and pound, and on 3 separate occasions, Rencounter completely flattened Ismail Nurmagomedov out, and I thought, well, this is it. That's why we didn't pick a side, because Rencounter just has to start wailing on him, and the referee will step in and stop it. But Rencounter wanted to hover instead of finishing the fight. He wanted to just kind of float in top position and keep beating on him, which, man, that was really disappointing because I think, you know, if you're coming in as a giant underdog the way that he was, it's already a huge upset. But if you finish the guy and put a staple on that thing, I mean, I know he dominated for the most part when he finally figured out he had a ground advantage, but he could have finished the fight on multiple points. Really upsets me that we lost that one. So unfortunately, we dropped 1.1 units going straight into the fight night, and as lined in as I have been, as so zoned in as I have been on these fights, I really thought we were going to have another one of those nights where I just whiffed. and the variance went all the way against us again. Because starting off losing that first bet of the night, it just doesn't feel good. So I was like, oh God, no, here we go again. So luckily, that is not the way that our night went. First of all, super exciting. I told y'all that this fight was going to be straight fire, and it delivered. Holy crap, from start to finish, UFC 239 delivered. Alejandro Perez and Song Yadong. I was not expecting Yadong to throw with that kind of heat. I honestly thought that he was going to outclass Perez over the course of 15 minutes. TKO starches him just in 2 minutes. Holy crap. Now, if you want to lay 2-1 on a fighter, that's what you're looking for. That is a legitimate favorite line, and I am very careful when I lay the wood in situations like that. I do not like laying big prices. But when you do, you got to know what you're doing, and I feel like I had a perfect read on Song Yadong. I knew he was going to outclass Alejandro, and he exceeded even my expectations, finishing it like that. Oh my God. So then we move on to our next disappointment of the evening. Randa Marcos. She didn't do anything right. So she comes out, and this is something I kind of wanted to touch on for a little bit. You never know what fighters' game plans are, and that is so important in fighting. If you can figure out what the game plan is going to be and know whether or not that gives the fighter a shot to win, that's very, very, very important. And we talked about the game plan for Claudia Gadelha needing to be wrestling, needing to be making her work and gas out. And the fact that Randa didn't do anything to tire her out was just a horrific sign. So she goes back after getting, really just an uneventful round one. Claudia didn't do anything impressive in this fight either. Randa just didn't have an answer for her either. So round one ends, very boring. I'm expecting Randa to change it up, right? Come out in round two, do something different. Try for a takedown yourself. Maybe more forward pressure instead of walking backwards in your little defensive crouching stance. Nope. She did the same damn thing for 3 straight rounds. There is something to be said for sticking to the game plan. If you have a game plan that you and your coaches have come up with, this is something that fighters can get criticized for a lot, and sometimes unfairly. Because if you stick to the game plan start to finish, sometimes you will see it manifest in round 3. You will see it eventually start to work. Other times, though, you got to be on your toes, and you've got to be able to make the adjustments and throw the game plan out the window if it's just completely not working. If it's not working as much as you would like it to, that's different from not working at all. Henry Cejudo versus Marlon Moraes is a perfect example of this. The game plan that they came in with, he realized, oh shit, that's not going to get it done. So he cranked up the offense and he went for it, and we saw what happened when he did that. Randa Marcos needed to do something like that in this situation, and I don't know if she has that third gear in her. So if she just comes out and sticks to the game plan, that's great if the game plan has merit to it. But in a situation like this where the game plan just wasn't going to get it done, it was a painful 15 minutes of watching her piss that fight away for us. I liked the line. I thought there was potential there. I was wrong. That was not the kind of performance you want to see when you bet someone at, plus 200. Even getting that kind of a line, that's not the kind of performance that you need to see for that. But moving right along, holy cow, Morlonchito Vera. I was all over this guy on Twitter, and I told everybody that if there was a line that was playable on him, that he was the one. And he got it done, man. You know what, though? Props to Hernandez, though. He stepped in and he made him work. He made Vera work for it, but Vera woke up and got it done by second-round submission, just like, you expect guys to do when they're on that level, or they think they're that level. They're trying to move up a rank in the UFC. That's the kind of performance you expect to see. I'm high on Vera. I've always been high on Vera. I didn't want to lay that massive amount of wood when I knew Hernandez was a capable fighter. And the way that Hernandez made Vera work, that would have made me very, very nervous. But if you threw Vera in your parlays and stuff like that, based on what I said, congratulations, because he got it done in devastating fashion in round 2. That was very impressive. Closing out the preliminary card, I got a bit of heat for calling Gilbert Melendez BJ Penn shot. And now, I know that was a bit of an extreme example because he's not getting KO'd stiff or anything like that, but he really looked like a shell of himself out there. Arnold Allen got comfortable after about halfway through the first round, and then you could just tell that Gil wasn't even going to be close. And man, that's something you see a lot with these fighters. When they're in the gym, they've got their own gym, or they're training young up-and-comers after they've retired, stuff like that. there's a certain level of respect there. And the young fighters will show respect to these legends, to these men who they idolize. And the older fighters are going, you know what? I'm hanging. You know what? I'm getting the better of this kid. But the kid is not going all out. So they get this false sense of security that they actually compete at the top level when really they're not. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. And the reason I mention that is because we've got a retiring fighter coming back on UFC Fight Night 155 Sacramento, so log that away because we will come back to it. The main card of UFC 239 was legit. Dear God. And best part about this is I only got one freaking fight wrong. Michael Chiesa, my boy, steps in here and gets that parlay, that first leg of the parlay checked off for us. He just completely overwhelmed Diego Sanchez. He was the bigger fighter. He had plenty of gas going in there. And good old Diego, he's very difficult to finish. He's very difficult to submit. So even someone as good as Chiesa was not able to get that done. So props to Diego. I'm glad he didn't get flatlined. I really thought Chiesa was going to be able to KO him stiff, and he hurt him a couple of times, but it really highlighted some of the issues that I see in Chiesa's game, and we are going to log that away for the next time he fights because I think we're going to get a beautiful price fading Chiesa when he gets the right opponent because he really has not improved as a striker whatsoever. I called it unorthodox, and I really thought maybe he would have a little bit crisper striking coming into this one with the time he's taken off. I thought he would show some more power now that he's up at 170. He did neither of those things. So I'm ready to fade Chiesa hardcore in his next fight, but this was the perfect matchup for him to dominate, which is why we put him in that parlay, and it worked out like a charm. Now, the next dog on the night, which was maybe the one I was most excited about, Jan frickin' Blachowicz. Oh, he just wrecked Luke Rockhold. And you know what? I had to go with the lines on the podcast on a Tuesday, so I only got plus 145 for the show, but I know each and every one of you that tailed that pick out there probably got upwards into the plus 180s, maybe even plus 200, because money poured in on Luke Rockhold. And I very nearly tweeted out a second unit on Jan Blachowicz because I was that confident and I knew exactly what was going to happen here. There are some times when you're sports betting where you just read the Matrix. It's like when Neo comes out and you can see all the green little dots coming out. You're not even seeing people anymore. You're just seeing ones and zeros. And that's exactly what happened in this spot. I knew Luke Rockhold's chin was shot. I knew Jan Blachowicz was a competent enough counter wrestler, and he was going to be big and strong enough to actually keep Luke from getting that takedown. And as soon as he did, he flipped the tables on him and he started pounding away at that chin. Rockhold was rocked and wobbly at the very end of round one, and I tweeted out, round two, it's coming. I knew it was coming because as soon as Luke's chin wobbled just a little bit, Jan's hand speed, man, you cannot stop that kind of hand speed with your chin. Luke needed to get all the way in or all the way out and make sure Jan wasn't in boxing range, and that's always been his Achilles heel. And did he do it? No, he did not, because he's too stubborn and he's too cocky to make those kinds of changes. Jan stepped in, banked him with a shot that honestly didn't even look like it was that much of a shot, but that's exactly what we're talking about. Got it done by KO in round two. I could not have been happier. I can't stand Luke Rockhold, and we cashed a nice big juicy underdog bet, so I loved that. And then, speaking of the Matrix, dodging bullets, baby, holy crap, Jorge Masvidal wrecks Ben Askren and sets a UFC record for the fastest knockout. I said that this line was unplayable. I thought Ben Askren wins this thing by decision, but I did not want to step in front of the runaway freight train that is Jorge Masvidal. And I also didn't want to lay the kind of wood because of the line on Ben Askren. I knew all the value was on Jorge Masvidal, and honestly, I didn't think he would win. The problem with this whole thing for me, it's an amazing story. It's an amazing knockout. It's an amazing highlight. That's the KO of the year. Hands freaking down. Sorry to everybody for the next 5 months of the year. You stand no shot. It's over. But you know what? I really wanted to see that fight play out. It's just like Conor McGregor facing Jose Aldo. Now, all the Conor chest thumpers out there, I don't know how many of you are Conor fanboys that follow me here, but I want to see that fight. The fight plays out so differently if that knee doesn't land. It was not a lucky knee. Masvidal planned that knee, And he timed it perfectly, and he knocked Ben stiff. So he got it done. Congrats to him. He wins the fight. But man, if he doesn't throw that knee at first, or maybe he misses it and Ben is able to scramble away from it or duck it, like, that's a whole different ballgame. The fight completely changes from that point on. So even though Jorge Masvidal was the better man on that night, I don't know if he's the better man 9 out of 10 times or 7 out of 10 times. I think Askren still might be, but we don't know that for sure because Askren's had such a weird run in the UFC. I am looking forward to his next fight though, because I think after the controversy of his first fight with Robbie Lawler and then the quick knockout by Masvidal, I think people are going to discount what happened in the Robbie fight. I think they're going to look poorly on what happened on the Robbie fight. They're going to take the Masvidal KO as what's the term I'm looking for? They're going to take that as a reinforcement of the fact that Ben did not, could not, and would not have got it done against Robbie Lawler. And I think that's wrong. So we might actually get a very, very, very good playable line on Ben Askren in his next fight because of these things happening back to back. So I am looking forward to keeping an eye out on that. Amanda freaking Nunes, the GOAT, the greatest women fighter that has ever graced the cage. Did we call that fight or what? Holly Holm is just not what everyone thinks that she is, and Amanda Nunes is more than everyone thinks that she is. She is not human. She steps in there in round 1, and she was eating a couple of shots. Holly actually looked like she was doing good, but as soon as Amanda got the timing, man, it took her like 30 seconds. As soon as she got the timing down, she was like, okay, now I got you pegged. And crushed Holly Holm. Holy cow. Closes out our parlay. And that's where I never do parlays where we end up laying a price unless I love them. And that's exactly what we did here. 3 units to win 2 units. That came through with flying freaking colors. And the one thing that I did wrong on this main card, the one thing that I did wrong, because even though I got the fight prediction wrong on Masvidal versus Askren, we correctly passed. We dodged that bullet. In the main event, I said John Jones wins this thing by decision, and it was plus 380. I really wish I had given that out as an official pick. I really wish I had given that out as an official pick, because it was just, that was writing on the wall to me. It was clear as day. And I love taking the underdogs and rooting for them, and I've got a soft spot in my heart for power punchers, so I kind of wanted Thiago, and I said I was going to throw a 5 on Thiago, and I did, just for a sweat. But really, John Jones is the GOAT, and as much as I think he might be fading, or as much as I think he likes to play with his food too much, and eventually he's going to get caught with his pants down, that almost happened here, by the way, he was able to turn it up, and he was able to do just enough to squeak by and win that fight, and it was by decision, just like I thought it was. So I feel like I'm missing out on some units, because as much as this was a good night, we could have pocketed another 3.8 units. So either way, good night. 4-2 on the official fight pick predictions for plus 2.35 units, and that feels good to get the monkey off our back. It feels good to log a solid winning night, not like a half unit win or a 1 unit win, but more than 2. Anything more than 2 with us doing our single unit picks, that's a damn good night. So that brings the overall podcast record to 74-67 on fight picks for plus 25.54 units. Now, this is the part where I pitch myself and I beg for money, because you know what? I'm going to rephrase that. I don't beg for money, but I would love, the few of you, and you know who you are. I don't want to out you on the podcast or on YouTube or anything like that, but I have gotten tips and donations to support the show, and you have no idea how much that means to me. You can send those to me on PayPal, maximusin3d@gmail.com. That will be in the description below. It will be on the description on the iTunes, YouTube. I'll put it out on Twitter. But anytime we have a damn good night, and some of you who are swinging big numbers out there, or even if you just like the show and want to support me, the tips and the donations really keep this train rolling. I am not a professional gambler. I do this after my day job. I'm a family man. I've got a wife and a daughter, so I take time away from them. And being able to have some kind of compensation for the work that I put in, especially when we have good, solid winning nights like this one, it really means a lot to me. It means a lot that you guys would support me in that way and kind of keep this thing going, because I do eventually want to find a way to monetize this. It is unfortunate that at this point I haven't found a way quite yet to do that, but the last thing in the world that I want to do is actually charge people for my picks and for my information, but I do feel like I put a whole lot of work and effort in for that. So if you feel like what I do is worth it, even if it's $5, it still just means the world to me. So once again, thank you to those of you that have, and just something to think about for those of you who haven't yet. With that, let's dive right on in. We are headed over to Sacramento, California. Everyone get ready to get your tan on. We are rocking the bantamweight division to kick this fight night off. Benito Lopez, 9-1-0, is facing off against late replacement Vince Moraes. And this is one of the very, very few times where I will quote a line that is unavailable to you on the podcast. If you follow me on Twitter, here's my usual pitch. You got to get your asses over on Twitter if you want to get those best lines, because every once in a while when I find a line that I like, I will tweet it out so that you can all tail me immediately or sooner, since the podcast only comes out on Tuesdays. And this is one of those cases. We got Vince Moraes at plus 165. That's my mind-blown sound effect. Plus 165. I cannot believe that they opened the line at plus 165. It makes no freaking sense to me. That line has corrected itself, and Vince Moraes is now a minus 145 favorite. That is right. You heard that. If you follow me on Twitter, you crushed this line move, and it's not even close. Absolutely demolished this line move. If you want to have a non-sweat on this fight, you can bet Benito Lopez on the other side at plus 125 and lock up some free cash. Now, if you want to just let it ride, don't blame you. Plus 165 is juicy, and I think Vince gets it done. So the official pick is Vince Moraes at plus 165. Now, I do caution you, if the line gets any worse than minus 145, I would not lay that number. Now, I do think that we could take him at minus 140, minus 145, somewhere in that ballpark. That's fine. I do think he wins the fight. But anything beyond that, we are getting out of range for him, because it is a closer fight than that line kind of suggests. We got massive value on the underdog line, but I don't want anybody betting Vince Moraes at like minus 170 or something like that. That's way too much wood to lay. Benito Lopez is really aggressive. He's one of those fighters that I feel like with low-level fighters or younger fighters, they get the offense down first and the defense comes later. So his offense is great. He's really, really long. He sticks his jab out there. He's good in scrambles, and he likes to force brawls, but he's very, very hittable. Now, no one's been able to really make him pay for that just yet. He's gotten hurt in a lot of his fights, but no one's really been able to just get it done on him. Vince Moraes, I think, is going to be the guy to do that. Vince Moraes may not have quite the offensive output that Benito Lopez does, but I think he's got a better counter-striking game. I think he picks his shots a lot more clearly. I mean, I really think he's going to be able to slow the pace of the fight down, and while Benito Lopez is going ham, he's going to be able to find counter shots. He's going to be the slightly shorter fighter. He's going to be able to step in inside of him. He's going to be able to find that chin. He's got really good defense. Like I said, he counters well. He does go for submission attacks, and here's the thing is he never quits. That is a big, big thing to me, especially when betting on an underdog. I know he's the favorite right now at this point, but I got him as an underdog, and he opened as an underdog, so I'm going to call him an underdog. He just never stops. He sets a pace, and he keeps that pace. He does not gas out or slow down. And one of the biggest things that I really like to take from him is that, well, two things actually. The first one is he fought Song Yadong. We saw what Song Yadong did stepping up in competition just this last weekend. Vince Moraes took that kid to a decision, and he wasn't taking a whole ton of damage from a guy that has the kind of output that we just saw him flatline Perez. So this is a spot where I think he's really going to be able to shine against a slightly lower level opponent than someone like Song was. The other thing is he came off the Contender Series, and he actually lost his Contender Series fight, but he shined well enough that they gave him a shot in the UFC, and I think they really made a good choice there because he damn near finished his opponent on the Contender Series. His opponent got saved by the bell. It was round 1, and Moraes had gotten back control and was pounding on him. He was pouring blood, and he just needed about 5 or 10 more seconds for the ref to step in and wave it off. But the horn got sounded, and I don't know if he blew his wad or or if he just kind of made a mistake in the second round, but he ended up getting caught in the second round, so it was really unfortunate because it could have been a first round domination entry to the UFC and really kind of changed the way people look at him. But I do think we're getting a bit of an underrated fighter here, and I don't think Benito Lopez is on his level. So long story short, Vince Morales is the pick. Next up, we head to the women's strawweight division. Liviana Renata Souza faces Brianna Van Buren, and this is one that, y'all know me, I'm not going to waste your time on this one. I do not have a clear read on this. One of these girls, it's their first fight ever in the UFC. The other one is coming to us straight from Invicta, and she has fought some names that you will recognize. However, none of them were successful in the UFC, so it's hard to say that she's UFC caliber. Their records look decent, 13-1, 8-2, but I didn't see anything stand out as far as a skill set that I really liked, and the line isn't something that I'm loving either. So we are going to take a straight pass and move right along. We're going to be in the men's bantamweight division where Ping Wong Lu faces Jonathan Martinez. Now, Lu is 13-5-0 fighting out of Team Alpha Male, which you're going to hear that a lot on this card, considering we're fighting out of Sacramento, which is Alpha Male's backyard. There's a lot of Alpha Male fighters coming on this card, and actually, I love when gyms do that. I give them a slight little tick of an advantage when they have multiple fighters fighting on the same card, because you know they're all pushing each other and they've got the same goal in mind. Jonathan Martinez is 10-2-0, and this is an interesting fight. Both of these guys are good wrestlers, and you know, both of them are really scrambly. Both of them throw up submissions from crazy spots. I think what's going to happen here is that the back control of Jonathan Martinez is going to make the difference. He has really good defensive wrestling, whereas Lu has really good offensive wrestling. And Martinez's fight against Luigi Buren showed that he is able to take on a good, solid wrestler, and he's able to come back and actually get the win in those kinds of situations. So if these two are going to scramble on the ground, I think that Martinez is going to get the better of those scrambles, and even though Lu has a good offensive grappling game, I think that Martinez will have a decent amount of success stuffing that offensive grappling game. I also think that Lu is one of those guys who's decent at being the hammer, but he's not great at being the nail. And Martinez has great transitions to back control. He has a great offensive guard and reversals in the scrambles. He catches people with some crazy submission attempts in the middle of those scrambles. He's got really solid flexibility and submission defense. So even when he does get caught deep in something, he has the ability to get out of it. The other thing is when he's on top position, he's got some serious ground and pound, and Lu likes to accept the bottom. He likes to go on his back, and he goes for some weird scrambly type reversals. I think Martinez will be able to pin him in those types of situations and get a couple of shots off. So when they get into those questionable spots, I favor Martinez. I think Martinez gets the win here. There was some more value on this one earlier, but I didn't feel convicted enough to make it an official play. We will make it a play now. Over at Pinnacle, you can get plus 128 on the underdog. Let's keep the dog train rolling. I like the value on Jonathan Martinez. Next up, one of my favorite featherweights in the world, Darren the Damage Elkins, is taking on one of my least favorite featherweights in the world, Ryan Hall. So straight out the gates, you know I'm biased on this one. Just want to make sure that's crystal clear. Ryan Hall bugs me. I don't like his face. Ryan, if you're listening, I'm just kidding. I love you. No, Ryan Hall, you know what? He's got a really awkward style that I just do not like. He's got a karate striking style where he's pretty good from range, but as soon as you get close to him, he's a ground specialist, and all he wants to do is get your legs. He loves leg locks, he loves heel hooks, and we know as jiu-jitsu practitioners that anybody who loves leg locks and heel hooks are basically the devil. So he's gonna go for these really awkward scrambles. He accepts the bottom and he accepts it way too freely because that's his world. He wants to be on his back. He wants to create awkward scrambles, and when he does, guys just don't know what to do with them, and it's hard to blame them. He ends up upside down and sideways, and you never know what's going on, but you know your foot is in danger of being snapped off. Now, he actually just beat BJ Penn, the shell of BJ Penn, in December. via heel hook. Something that bugged me watching that fight is, as a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, yes, I am only a blue belt because unfortunately I had to hang it up for a little while. I will go back to it, I promise, coach, if you're listening. BJ defended that heel hook the wrong way. So when you get a heel hook, when someone attacks you with a heel hook, you roll with the heel hook. It's like spinning out in your car. When you hit a patch of ice, if you go against the spin of the car, your car flips. If you go with the spin of the car, yes, you're spinning, but at least you're not dead. That's exactly what it's like being in a heel hook. If they tug your heel one direction, you roll with it because it protects your knee from exploding. BJ, who is a phenomenal Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, that's how he got into MMA in the first place, stepped the wrong way. He stepped over Ryan Hall the opposite direction and basically blew his own knee out in that defense. Just something really hard to watch as a fan. So not really that great of a win for Ryan Hall because, as we know, BJ Penn is nothing even close to the caliber that he used to be. Before that, Hall won a very weird decision over Gray Maynard. That was 2 years prior, December 3rd, 2016. I lost money on that one because I had a bet on Gray Maynard, and that was a fight that I was live at and really, really disappointed by because Hall flops on his back. He throws these long these long karate kicks at you, and as soon as you come back in within striking range, he just flops on the ground. So you either come down to the ground with him where you're in his world, or you back up and he gets back up and he starts throwing these kicks again. It's really, really weird. It's not a fun style of fight to watch. It's not overly entertaining. The crowd is going to boo because if Darren Elkins isn't able to get in there and do some damage, Hall is just going to flop onto his back, and then Darren will have to wait for him to stand up, or he will accept that he has to get on the ground with this guy, and that's just not a good choice. Now, Damage, he has a completely different set of fighters that he has fought, a whole different level of competition. He's faced Ricardo Lamas, Michael Johnson, Dennis Bermudez, Mirsad Bektic, who he folded like a freaking chair in the biggest comeback KO win we've seen in years, and he also has fought Alexander Volkanovski. Now, he did get TKO'd by Ricardo Lamas, but we all know how good Ricardo Lamas is. He took Alexander Volkanovski, who will be fighting for the belt more than likely after the most recent. He's probably got the next title shot. After Frankie gets done with Holloway, Volkanovski is the man. He took that guy to a decision. He survived that whole fight with a powerful wrestler and striker in Volkanovski. And he's been by far the more active fighter. He's fought 3 times in 2018 and twice in 2017, whereas Ryan Hall fought once at the very end of the year of 2018, hadn't fought for 2 years prior to that, and then hadn't fought for a full calendar year before that. The 3 UFC opponents that Ryan Hall has are BJ Penn, Gray Maynard, and Artem freaking Lobov. He's beaten 2 of them by decision, and then he got the heel hook on BJ Penn. What that tells me is that against old mid-level talent in Gray Maynard and Artem Lobov, again, Gray, I'm sorry to call you that, I love you, but this isn't, 2010 anymore. He can get it done by decision, but he's not going to submit those guys. They know better than to get on the ground with him. BJ Penn is the shell of himself, and he was able to get that heel hook. He defended it completely wrong, and he's terrible these days. That doesn't do anything for me. Darren Elkins is an active, current fighter who was on a 6-fight win streak before he ran into Volkanovski. And the only way that you beat Elkins, if you stop him, you have to completely shut that man down, and with strikes. He walks through anything and everything that you do. I think he's going to be Gray Maynard 2.0 in this situation. If he wants to go on the ground, he can. He is a half-decent wrestler. He's got good ground and pound from the top, but I don't think that's a smart game plan. Now, he might stalk Hall, and then when Hall flops to his back, try to get a couple shots in, let him stand back up. Gray Maynard only would use his boxing and really doesn't have a whole lot of output. Elkins, on the other hand, has a ton of output. He beat guys like Michael freaking Johnson. He was able to come back and freaking KO Mirsad Bektic. It would not surprise me if he clips Hall with a big shot and puts him out, because this guy is not a striker. He's a grappler. Now, this is a striker versus grappler match. If Hall gets this thing on the ground and gets a hold of one of Elkins' legs, it could be an easy night, but we are steering straight into that volatility. I will take the shot on Darren to damage Elkins, because unless you knock him out cold, he will always be coming for you, and he will not slow down. And that's where Gray Maynard lost a decision, because he was trying to entice Hall to fight his fight. Elkins will make Hall fight his fight. And if you want to flop on your back, he will kick your legs. And if you don't want to go to the ground with him, Elkins will make him stand back up, and then he will flop on the back again, and the judges will not like seeing that over and over and over. And if Hall throws a long kick from outside of range, he's not going to shell up like Gray Maynard did, because he is not scared of his chin like Gray Maynard was. He has complete faith in his chin, and only one guy has actually been able to crack it. Even though he gets cut up and he bleeds a lot, he doesn't go out cold a whole lot, and only Lamas has been able to get that done. And that's saying something with the level of competition that he has been facing. We will roll with my boy, Darren Elkins. That's our third dog on the card. Diehards, buckle up. It's gonna be a crazy one. We can get Elkins right now at minus 105 over on 5 dimes. That's the line. Unfortunately, once again, we're taking the dog and missed out on just a little bit of value. He opened up at plus 120, but again, I had to really dig into this fight before I made my mind up. Lock it up, minus 105. You can get that over at 5 dimes. Let's go. Next up, we head back to the women's division. We are going to do women's bantamweight here, where Juliana Pena makes her long-awaited UFC return versus Nico Montano. And this is a really, really fun fight, because the Venezuela vixen Juliana Pena is coming off maternity leave. Her last fight was in January of 2017, where she lost to Valentina Shevchenko. Now, prior to that, she was riding this 4-fight win streak that looked really good over Katzengano, Jessica Ai. She had a couple of tough customers. The other two, Miliana Duvida and Jessica Ravatsky, she stopped both of those girls by TKO. So against the low level, she's getting them out of there, and then against the upper level, she was grinding them out by decision. She's a very, very good and very powerful wrestler for this division. She's coming back against Nico Montano, who in her most recent fight, December 2017, defeated Roxanne Modafferi for the very first flyweight belt. This is a really weird spot, because Montano was the champion at 4-2. She's got next to no professional experience, and she's kind of a head case. She really went to war with Roxanne Modafferi, and Modafferi was able to land some takedowns on her and actually had some success in the striking with her as well. Juliana Pena is a much, much stronger girl and a much more powerful wrestler than my girl Roxanne Modafferi is. I really think that she's going to handle Montano in this spot. And one thing that I have a rule, we call them guidelines instead of actual rules. But one of my guidelines is you don't bet on a woman coming off of maternity leave. And I apologize to any of the women or ladies who listen to this show who might take offense by that, but I have a very good reason for it. When a woman becomes a mother for the first time, that changes them to their very core. Now, that's not always true. Sometimes that doesn't, but more often than not, it does. I can say that for my own wife. I do have a daughter. And when you're a professional fighter, you're a vicious, brutal, killing machine. Even if you're a woman. And that takes some time to get back. If you have been the loving, nurturing, caring mom, sometimes the first time that cage door shuts, you don't got it. Sometimes the first time you get back in that cage, you can't find that second gear. You don't want to hurt the person that's across from the cage from you the same way that you did a couple of years ago. And it takes them a little bit of time to get that back. And I really, really always pass in these kinds of situations. I'm going to break my rule. I'm going to take Juliana Pena because I think she is just that much of a beast. I've been following her on social media, and she got in great shape right after having her child. She did have her child back in 2017, so it's been 2 full years since then, and she has been training ever since then. She's also been watching and commentating MMA since then, which means she's been around it. She's been very, very much baptized in the sport since she had her child. And because of that, I think she's going to still have that fire that we're looking for. The other thing to keep in mind is that she is a wrestler. When fighters don't really when they're not clicking, they go back to what they know. So let's say she worked on a whole bunch of striking and she still kind of gets boxed up on the feet. She's going to shoot for a takedown. You always revert back to what you know best. So even if she is a shell of herself in there, she's still going to have that wrestling. She's still going to be able to get the takedown. And that's really where I think her path to victory here is. I would not be surprised if she pounds out Nico Montano, because if you can get taken down by Roxanne Modafferi, you will get taken down by Juliana Pena. And if Juliana Pena is at all like she used to be, her ground and pound is something out of hell. We're going to lay the wood with Juliana Pena and take that shot. She's sitting at minus 165 right now. I don't want to parlay her because of, like I said, my concerns with her being a new mother coming back and things like that. I don't want to parlay her, and enough money has come in on Montano to drive the line down for us on Pena to go ahead and take that shot. So let's go ahead and lay the wood. 1.65 units at minus 165 to win one. Can we just take a deep breath for a second and say how much I love this card? We're heading back to flyweight where Andre Touchy-Fili faces Shimon Moraes. And I am super high on Shimon Moraes. And on the flip side of that, I'm not that high on Andre Touchy-Fili. Andre Touchy-Fili is another team alpha male fighter. He's 29 years old and he is 19-6. He's on a decent bit of a streak right now. He dropped a fight to Calvin Kattar, but since then he has gone 3-1. He dropped a split decision to Michael Johnson in August, which honestly, that's something that throws a little red flag in there for me because I think Michael Johnson is a shell of himself. He has a split decision win over Dennis Bermudez, which is another little bit of a flag that Dennis Bermudez is also not really what he used to be. He did get a good win over Miles Fury Jury, but really Artem Lobov split over Dennis and then lost to Michael Johnson. He's kind of on the back foot a little bit there in my opinion. Shimon Moraes on the other hand is 11-3. He is 2-2 in his last 4, but he lost to Zabit Magomedsharipov, which really no shame in losing to that. He gave up a submission in the 3rd round after a really fun back and forth kind of fight. So I honestly, that's one of those ones that we can kind of put a line through. Zabit is a complete monster, potentially a next title challenger type of guy. Losing to him after a war and having a half decent showing in that fight, your stock kind of goes up there even though you have the loss on your record. Now, he dominated Matt Sales. He fought and beat Julio Arce in a split decision, which in my opinion is an impressive win. I didn't like that it was a split, but Arce is a complete beast. He's 16-3, and the only guy who's beat him since he got into the UFC is Shimon Moraes, and he's been dominating basically everybody else. So that's a solid win, even if it's close there. And by the same kind of token, his most recent loss was to Sadiq Youssef, who I am super high on. Sadiq Youssef is a complete monster, and Sadiq, I hope you're listening to the show. I interact with this dude on Twitter every now and again. He's 9-1, and I cannot wait to see more of this kid. It's only his 2nd UFC fight, but boy, does he look good. Shimon Moraes was physically dominated by Sadiq Youssef. They did a lot of clinching. They did a lot of up against the cage type of grappling, and Sadiq was just the slightly more polished fighter and the slightly stronger man. And I honestly think that's exactly what Moraes is going to do to Touchy-Fili. Touchy-Fili is long, he's rangy, he can kind of come from odd angles with knees and kicks and stuff like that because of his build, but I think Shimon Moraes is just going to be too physically powerful for him. I think that Shimon Moraes is going to be able to pin him up against the cage. I think that Shimon Moraes, of the two of them, is going to have the knockout potential here, and Fili does have a little bit of a chin issue. He gets caught, and we've seen him hurt a couple times very recently, actually, in his last few fights. I think that Moraes is going to be able to tag him up, especially if he's able to hold him up against the cage. He will be able to tag him up. Andre Fili might be able to have a ground advantage on Moraes, but I don't know if he can even get the takedown because of the difference in their physical strength. I am all over Shimon Moraes here, and here's the best part about this fight. The world is on Andre Touchy-Fili. He opened up as a plus 135 dog, and 97% of the money, you heard that right, 97% of the money has come in on Andre Fili. It has driven Moraes down from minus 155 to minus 120 for us, and we have to say thank you to everybody out there throwing piles of money on Andre Touchy-Fili, because I am a whole lot more excited about betting Moraes at minus 120 than I am laying minus 155 or minus 160 with him. I think the opener was the correct line. I don't I'm not high on Fili right now, but it at least will save us some money if I'm wrong. So let's go ahead and lay the minus 120 on Shaman Moraes. And again, this is another one where I would not be surprised if Moraes got the knockout. Now we finally get to some big boys where Mike Slow Rodriguez is in the UFC's light heavyweight division, which is getting very, very, very interesting. I've talked about that briefly before. I love 205. He was supposed to fight Gian Villante, and I was all about betting him because Gian Villante is basically terrible. But unfortunately, Gian Villante had to pull out. Now Rodriguez is going to get a new opponent in John Allen, and he is a massive favorite. He's sitting at about minus 380, minus 420, minus 400. I mean, he's chalk all the way down the board against this kid, John Allen. And because of that, I'm honestly just going to kind of steer clear of this one. I don't know a whole lot about John Allen, and it's light heavyweight. Maybe he can get in here and throw a bomb and get it done. He got a shot on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series Brazil and got submitted in the second round. So, I mean, I know that's not saying a lot because he only got one shot at it and he got caught, and who knows how he's going to match up with Mike Rodriguez. I suggest a pass here. It's a dog or pass type of spot. I'm not laying that kind of wood with Mike Rodriguez. He is a KO artist, but he's also untested at the top level. John Allen is obviously not the top level, but do you want to lay that kind of wood on this kid? Definitely not. I'm probably not going to take the flyer on this one. I'll just kind of sit back and see where the chips fall. Can you believe that we just made it through the preliminary card? Woof! There is a lot of action on this card. Those are some great stylistic matchups, and I cannot wait for it. And we've got some serious action going on the main card as well. Here we go, and we even lost a fight. Bernil Dariush versus Drakkar Klose got canceled, and I'm upset about that. I kind of hope they get Klose a late replacement match because I was really stoked to watch that fight. At any rate, we kick off the preliminary card. No, we're in the main card. What am I talking about? We kick off the main card where Marvin Vettori faces Cesar Ferreira. And Marvin Vettori is 12-4-1 versus Ferreira's 13-7-0. And this is another one where, holy cow, interesting matchmaking. Boy, so I'm really high on Marvin Vettori. The kid's only 25 years old and he is so thick. He's super strong. Very durable. He's got solid striking. He's actually got some really solid grappling as well. He lost a decision to ACJ Antonio Carlos Jr., and the fact that he got out of that one in 2016 without getting subbed at his age is very impressive. He comes back and he grinds out Vitor Miranda. That's a decent win for a young kid right there. He gets thrown in there against Amari Akhmedov, and that was one where Akhmedov, I think, was just coming up to 185 after fighting at 170, and he is a strong, powerful wrestler, and they fought to a draw, which was a very, very interesting fight because of how back and forth it was. But the fact that Vettori was able to defend the takedowns of Akhmedov, that says a lot to me. He gave some of them up, but he kept himself safe, and he was always able to get back to his feet, and Akhmedov drops bombs. Then he went to a decision with Israel Adesanya where he dropped a split, and I'm huge on Israel Adesanya. He's an incredible talent, and I am so hyped for the future of this kid. The fact that Marvin Vettori dropped a split to him is nothing short of phenomenal. Adesanya is the interim champion right now. He's about to unify the belt against Robert the Reaper Whittaker, and we could be singing a different tune if the split went the other way. Because if Vettori gets the nod in that fight, we're not talking about Israel Adesanya. He got halted before he ever fought Brad Tavares, before he ever fought Derek Brunson, Silva, and Gastelum. He got stopped by a young kid that's 25 years old and is 2-1 in the UFC. And that just, to me, that I am so much higher on Vettori maybe than I should be because of that. The way that I rate Israel Adesanya in the division, I'm very impressed by him. And the fact that Vettori got his licks in that fight really steps him up a notch here for me. He's facing Cesar Ferreira, who is a UFC veteran basically at this point. Ferreira is the the second coming of Vitor Belfort. He looks a lot like him, actually. It could be his son, but he's his star pupil. Fights out of Brazil. He's 34 years old, and now he's getting at that point where, to me, he's kind of dipping off onto the end of his career. We correctly bet against him and faded him with Ian the Hurricane Heinz, which, love that guy. That was such a good fight. And here's the thing. Heinz put the blueprint out for exactly how you fight Ferreira. Ferreira comes out hard in round 1, and if he doesn't get the takedown in round 1, he tires, and you pour it on him in rounds 2 and 3. And that's exactly what happened. Heinz was able to defend the attempts, the takedowns, the submissions, all of it, and then he just started wailing on Ferreira. He kept himself safe, and he made sure he made him pay every single time he came in trying to get those takedowns. Cesar Ferreira is not a threat on the feet. Vettori is going to have the advantage in the striking. If Vettori is able to defend the takedown and make sure this fight stays standing, Cesar is going to be a fish out of water, and it's going to look exactly like the fight with Ian Heinz did. I think this is a perfect step up in competition for a young fighter like Vettori. I really like the matchup, and I also think that Vettori has a nice little spot here to show off some improvements. Y'all always hear me talk about these young fighters. When they take time off, you see leaps and bounds in their skills. He hasn't fought since April of 2018 when he fought Israel Adesanya. Now, I know Israel Adesanya improved every single fight and has been trial by fire because he fought 4 times since then. But I also don't mind Vettori taking the time off and really learning some new stuff to really show off in his craft. And I think that he should be getting the win here. Now, the line is the thing that kind of has me questioning here because he is a massive minus 149, minus 150. But it's been a long time since we've done this. Reverse line move alert, ladies and gentlemen. 61% of the money has come in on Cesar Ferreira. And he opened up at plus 120, but now he is at plus 130. More money has come in on Cesar Ferreira, or more bets have come in on Cesar Ferreira, and yet somehow he is a bigger underdog. And what that always tells me is we want to be on the same side as that reverse line movement. That means the sharp money, or the money that the bookies respect, is the money that's coming in on Marvin Vettori. And even though the masses are betting Cesar Ferreira because they can see the threat of the submission, the smarter people out there are the ones who are betting Marvin Vettori. So even though I think the line is just a little wider than I would like it to be, we are firing this week, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to take that minus 150 on Marvin Vettori. Next up, we are actually sticking around the middleweight division where Carl Robertson is facing Wellington Turman. Carl Robertson is 7-2-0, and he's an interesting case. The only reason he's 7-2-0 is because he got caught by Cesar Ferreira and he got caught by Glover Teixeira. This guy's got a bit of a hole in his grappling. He's got a little hole in his ground game. And if it wasn't for that, he might still be undefeated. The other thing we've got to remember is that the loss against Glover Teixeira came at 205 pounds. He was a late notice replacement for Glover, and he got subbed the way a smaller man who's not as good at jiu-jitsu should get subbed. We can honestly just draw a line straight through that one. He never should have been in that fight. He was trying to show off for his new boss. He was trying to do Dana White and the UFC a solid by stepping up and filling that hole in at 205, and props to him for doing that. He got a quick, easy paycheck for it, and he got out of there quickly with Glover Teixeira putting him on the mat and subbing him in round 1. But if it wasn't for that one, he would be 7-1 and look like a totally fine prospect at 185. So ignore that one. Pretend it never happened. Wellington Turman, who has a terrible, terrible name, by the way. Shame on his parents. I don't want to say that. Turman is 15-2, and this is his UFC debut. Now, you know what the fun part about this is? He's got 7 submission wins. This dude's got a 47% submission rate. So they are throwing poor call. You know what? Okay, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here for just a second. It's really funny to me. You see the UFC matchmakers where they're like, oh, this guy is really good against strikers. So all he fights is strikers. And he gets the matchup that plays like right into his strengths because they want to see it. And some guys, they're like, let's put them in grappler versus striker matchups where it's like, oh, he's a striker and he's a grappler and that's always fun to watch. But then you know what? After 1 or 2 of those, they throw him a bone. Poor Carl Robertson. They're only giving him submission grapplers, and I don't get it, because it's like, that's where this guy's hole is. I mean, maybe he wants to prove a point. Maybe he's calling for these kinds of matchups. Maybe they think that this is a low ball because Turman is only 22 and he's making his UFC debut, which means he's probably not ready for this level of competition. You don't want to debut against a guy like Carl Robertson. And coming off a submission loss to Ferreira and Teixeira, the fact that they would just give somebody who's mostly a submission guy, oh, I mean, it just kind of makes me laugh. We will see how this one plays out, but honestly, it wouldn't shock me if Turman got it done, just because if you've got that type of offensive submission game, Robertson doesn't seem to know what to do with it. He's only 28 years old, so he could very, very much be improving, but if he's the big dog in a small gym, sometimes you see that where they dig their heels in and they just don't make the kind of advances in their game that they need to. And that could be something that we see here too. So I'm just not gonna touch this one. I think Carl Robertson gets it done probably by KO. He more than likely is the better fighter. He's definitely fought the higher level of competition, but Turman's a big 22-year-old kid. And if he comes in here, pissing hot, he's maybe that's the wrong term. That's the term that I use for when they pop for performance enhancing drugs. But hey, it's his first UFC fight. Maybe he'll do that too. But if he comes in here all piss and vinegar and he tries to show the elder statesman what's what, prove he belongs in the UFC, maybe he gets the sub, because that's what Carl, Robertson is bad at. And he's a nice big juicy dog right now. He's sitting at about plus 185. He opened at plus 190. So most of the money has come. Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, this is a slight reverse line movement. It's a little one, but it's there. Most of the money has come in on Robertson. And instead of becoming a bigger favorite, he has become a smaller favorite. So something to keep in mind. Lots of conflicting information here. I think this is an easy spot for us to take a day off. I already have a whole lot of picks for everybody on this one, so we're going to let this one sail on by. Wouldn't mind you taking a a little shot on Turman, because that is a nice big juicy underdog line. But I wouldn't suggest parlaying Robertson, because I mean, he just has a significant hole in his game here, and Turman's exactly the guy that's going to exploit it. So caution, if you like doing parlays and big, favorite types of lines, there's not a whole lot of that on this card, and I would avoid doing it with Robertson. We are going to go back down to the little guys after that one for a clash that I am very, very, very excited for. Josh Emmett, 14-0, is facing Mirsad Bektic, who is 13-1-0. We touched very lightly on Mirsad Bektic when we spoke about Darren the Damage Elkins, that single soul loss that he has. That's the damage, ladies and gentlemen. He took a beating in that fight for a full 3 rounds. He was bloodied up to the point that you might have had a doctor step in and stop that thing. And then he got up and he landed a big bomb on Bektic and then a head kick afterward that folded him over. It was amazing. Love that comeback story. Love Darren Elkins. Like I said, he's always a dog that you want to bet on because he never stops coming. This is an interesting matchup. I'm a huge fan of Josh Emmett. I damn near got him on the podcast, and I am still trying to get him on the podcast. I've been talking to him on Twitter for a decent amount of time, and he actually agreed to come on the podcast. So cross our fingers here. Maybe he actually pulls through on that and does go ahead and show up, because that would be fun. He is 14-2. And looks like he was a runaway freight train headed for the title. He lost a split decision to Desmond Green in 2017 after winning his first 2 UFC fights, and then he just clicked. Everything started going real well for him. He beats Felipe Arantes, and then in 2017, he smashed Ricardo Lopez. He did something that nobody saw coming. He flatlined Lamas in the first round of their fight in 2017, and that was a big eye-opener for me because he had been a bit of a decision machine prior to that, and he really just kind of seemed to figure things out. And you always see that bright moment when it clicks for a fighter and everything starts working the way it's supposed to. That was the Lamas fight for this guy. He figured it out, he got it working, and unfortunately I feel like he got a little high on himself because then he stepped in against Jeremy Stephens and he got KO'd in round 2, and it was a brutal KO. We're talking facial fractures, like didn't know if he would come back and ever fight again type of KO. He takes a year off, and then he came back against Michael Johnson, and arguably he was losing the Michael Johnson fight. It was a very back and forth affair, but Michael Johnson seemed to have a speed advantage on him. And I didn't know the way it was going to go on the judges' scorecard. We had a bet on Josh Emmett for that one, and I was kind of sitting on the edge of my seat, panicking a little bit on that one because I wasn't sure how that was going to get scored, but my heart told me it was going to be Michael Johnson. And then boom, in the third round, he laid on that power and he got it done again by KO. I love this guy. He's one of those dogs that I talk about where if you play them, they will never stop fighting for your money. And that's always what I'm looking for. If you bet on a dog, you want them to go the full 3 rounds. If they get caught, okay, that's fine. But if they don't get their lights shut off, if they don't have to tap out or get choked out, the fact that they will fight till the very last bell looking for that shot that's going to end the fight for them, that's the very best kind of dog that you can get out there. Now, Bektic is 28 years old, and he's a bit of a phenom. He's fighting out of TriStar, and he is just incredible. Besides that loss to Darren Elkins, he rebounded from that facing Godofredo Castro, and he knocked that dude out with a shot to the chest. It was a body shot KO, and that was something crazy to see. You could tell he was being the cleaner aggressor in that kind of fight, but I don't know if maybe Godofredo had like a loose rib or something like that, or if it was, I don't want to take credit away from Bektic because it could have just been Bektic's power that got it done. I'm not sure, but you don't see people get punched in the chest and have them go down. That's like some kung fu dragon heart stopping type shit. He hit him right in the freaking chest and he just collapsed. You could tell the kind of pain he was in too. Now, Bektic comes back and he faces Lamas, and it was a real scrambly back and forth type of fight, and that's where we're going to use this as a measuring stick because they do have a common opponent. And, well, Emmett flatlined Lamas, where Bektic took his first step up in competition, and he squeaked by on a split decision. I see some holes in Bektic's game. I do. He's a very, very strong grappler. He's a good wrestler, and he's got a very good offensive game, but he's one of those guys, I know I used this a little bit earlier before, but he's not as good at being the nail as he is being the hammer. Josh Emmett, on the other hand, can roll with the punches, and unless you break his face quite literally like Jeremy Stephens did, he will come back and get it done. Now, Jeremy Stephens is one of the hardest hitters in this division. I know Bektic has power as well. He does have 6 KOs to his name, but he doesn't really have any high-level KOs. You look at the people who he has finished, and I mean, in the UFC, it's only Lucas Martins and then that body shot KO of Godofredo Castro, and neither of those guys are people who I would call high-level. So I honestly think that this is a step up more for Bektic than it is for Emmett. And I know Bektic has a grappling advantage here, but Emmett is no slouch. He's another Team Alpha Male guy. He is in there with some of those wrestlers. He's very fast. He's got good footwork. And if this gets scrambly, if this gets a little wild, I think Emmett's got more power than Bektic does. And once again, we're getting a beautiful line here. He opened up at plus 150, and we can still get plus 151. So we're going to lock up the big dog. And as biased as I may be, that's the right price. I mean, I wanted to pass. I wanted to say that I'm biased and I'm going to cheer for Josh Emmett and I want to have him on the podcast. And it's very nice to tell somebody that you bet on them when you have them come on for an interview and they just won their fight and you just won some cash betting on them. It's kind of the perfect storm scenario. But I knew that coming in and I knew I was biased and I knew I wanted to do that. And I was going to tell you all, I'm going to sprinkle on Josh Emmett because I want to believe, but I don't know if he actually wins the fight. And breaking it down a little bit more, looking into it, and then looking at the line, it's there. The right number is there. And because the right number is there, I can't turn it down. Josh Emmett, plus 151. Let's get it. That brings us to the co-main event of the evening. Bantamweight division. Uriah Faber, the California grandpa, California kid, is facing Ricky Simone. Uriah Faber is 30-10-0 and can run laps around Simone's professional record, 15-1-0. This is a passing of the torch fight. Uriah Faber coming out of the retirement that he should have stayed in, regardless of whether or not he wins this fight. He's one of the few people that got out of the sport not getting flatlined in every single fight, and he got a win in his last fight. Why is he coming back? Stay gone, Faber. Bugs the crap out of me, drives me nuts. I know he wants to compete. I know he thinks he's still got it, but this is exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of the card when we spoke about Gilbert Melendez last week. He's in the cage training with these young, hungry monsters coming out of Team Alpha Male. He's holding his own when he's training these guys, but you know what? He's Papa Faber. He's Uncle Faber. He's the guy that he's teaching all of them everything that they know. They're not going to go hard on him. And yeah, he might win one over every once in a while because he's got that veteran savvy, but he can't compete at the top level of the game anymore. And this is just going to be a weird spot. So Faber, we got to go all the way back to 2016, unfortunately, for his last couple of fights. He went 2-3 in his last 5. Now, he lost Frankie Edgar, who, especially 2015 Frankie Edgar, was a monster. He did win a decision over Frankie Saenz, who's a mid-level type of guy. He loses to Dominic Cruz, Jimmy Rivera, both very respectable opponents, and didn't get finished by either of them. And then he wins a unanimous decision over Brad Pickett. Now, Brad Pickett is another guy who potentially could have / should have retired already. And I think Vera did that to him by head kick in his last fight, if memory serves correctly. So Brad Pickett and Frankie Saenz are nothing to write home about. I think Ricky Simone handles both of those guys as well. So both of Faber's wins are not exactly credible. And they were 3 years ago. Ricky Simone is 26. He's a young, hungry lion. And he has wins over Ronnie Yaya, Montel Jackson, and Merab Dashvili. And he finished Vashvili. So he's only got 3 UFC fights to his name, and I know he's a baby in the sport compared to Uriah Faber, so maybe Faber can win one over on him, pull something out of his ass, and get it done with some kind of crazy trick that he's never seen before, but I just don't see it. Ricky Simon is a astounding minus 345 right now. And I also don't like that either. This fight is a complete pass in every sense of the word because Ricky Simon, yeah, he's going to come out young and hungry and mean, and he's really going to look to put a stamp on this thing. But maybe Uriah Faber's one of his legends. Maybe Uriah Faber is the guy that he looked up to. He's the reason he got into the sport. Well, that might cause him to put the brakes on. Maybe that opens the door for Uriah Faber and he wins a scramble that he shouldn't. Or maybe Simon doesn't finish, so we're not going to take him inside the distance because he might not want to hurt his hero. Maybe Faber's a good enough grappler that he actually gets one over on him. He's not. I don't think he's going to do that, actually. But, I mean, you see my point. There's a lot of ways that this could go wrong. I know people that have big bets on Ricky Simon, and I hope that they cash. I mean, if you got a better line than minus 300, then sure, there's probably some value on him if you got him at like minus 200 or something like that. But I am not taking a poke on Uriah Faber. He's one of those guys that you always felt like he was in it simply because of his athleticism and because of the way that he's really good at wrestling and jiu-jitsu. He blends them together very, very well. But that's not going to be enough against a kid like Ricky Simon. And if it is going to be enough against a kid like Ricky Simon, I don't think we're getting enough juice on it. I mean, plus 285, it's okay. It's a nice big line. We like nice big juicy lines, but I just don't see it happening. I mean, Simon is 15-1, and I think that he stomps on the last 2 wins that Faber has, and Faber's 40 now, and y'all know that I've got a rule on 40-year-olds. I don't bet on 40-year-olds unless I've got a damn good reason to do so. That's the rule. You know what? I need to copy the rules from Wedding Crashers, add my own for the Die Hard MMA podcast, and make an actual set of Die Hard betting rules for everybody to follow. But one of those would be you don't bet on 40-year-olds unless you've got a very specific reason that will let you. And line value to me is not enough of a specific reason. I don't think he's going to get the win here. And, maybe you can find a prop on Ricky Simon to win this thing, by decision, because I do think that Faber will have the ability to protect himself that way. But even that's minus 140. And it wouldn't surprise me if he got caught by something. Because when you haven't seen an old fighter for 3 years and they come back again, that chin isn't there sometimes. That, we saw BJ Penn get caught in a heel hook. And I know Faber's not going to be the level of BJ Penn, but we don't have anything to show for the last 3 years. So completely steering clear from this one. Let's just watch and hope Faber doesn't get hurt. We have reached the main event of the evening, where Germaine de Randamie faces Aspen Ladd. And this is a fight that I honestly don't know what to do with. Somehow they opened up Aspen Ladd as a big underdog, and I loved that. I was going to be all over Aspen Ladd as an underdog, but the floodgates opened and she got immediately bet all the way up to minus 200 in some places. Holy shit. I didn't think she was quite that high. Wow. Oh, you're getting a live reaction right now. I wish I had my camera on my face rather than just audio, because this could be one of those YouTube reaction videos right now. Holy crap. How is she minus 200? Oof, y'all are disrespecting JDR. You are straight disrespecting JDR. Now, I am biased in this fight. I am very, very, very biased in this fight, but not the way that you think. I hate Germaine de Randamie. I can't stand her. In her fight with Holly Holm, the after the bell shots, not once but twice, and then sticking her tongue out at her as she tried to rock her after the bell sounded, like, Germaine de Randamie is a piece of shit. And then she wins the belt over Holly Holm and then vacates the title rather than fighting Cyborg, which, I mean, you know Cyborg is the next one in line. Like, what are you doing? Why would you take the fight and take the belt if you're just gonna run and hide and not fight the next person in line? The whole thing was an absolute mess. Anyway, I had a bias in that fight because first off, I thought Holly Holm was going to win it. I think I bet Holly Holm there. And I still had the beer goggles on of Holly Holm being a better fighter than she actually is. So I still had Holly at championship level in my mind when I took a look at that fight, and I discounted some of the skills that Germaine de Randamie has, and I thought that Holly was going to have a lot more success, and she's just not that great of an MMA fighter. And even if she was that great of an MMA fighter, like right when the moment when she fought Ronda Rousey, that was the perfect literal stylistic matchup for Holly Holm. Everyone thinks that she shocked the world there. If you were going to build a machine to defeat Ronda Rousey, it was Holly Holm. So that one was gifted to her on a silver platter, and then she lost to everybody after that point. So, sorry, but Holly Holm is just not that good. Germaine de Randamie then, finally, after a year and fighting with the UFC and all that bullshit, she gets a chance to fight Raquel Pennington. And I like Rocky. I am a fan of Rocky, but Rocky had just gotten blasted by Amanda Nunes in her 5-round title fight against her, and she had hung in there and looked good all the way up until the 5th round when she got crushed. And I say she looked good, that's maybe a little strong. She was getting roughed up, but at least she was surviving. And then she got flatlined. So she took a whole lot of damage, and I feel like Pennington has aged very, very rapidly because of that kind of a fight. You know, it's one of those ones that took such a toll damage-wise on her that she may not have been the fighter that she was before. I don't think she likes getting hit in the face quite as much anymore, and she lost unanimous decision against Germaine. Now, I actually think it was a closer fight. I think that she was very successful in her grappling, and I wouldn't have been mad if they gave Raquel Pennington that fight. I know Germaine landed some shots and stuff like that on her, but if you were going based on the aggression and the octagon control, that was all Raquel Pennington, and she had a decent amount of it. So, not arguing that case necessarily, that's not what we're here for, but she had success there. And that's where I think Ladd is going to have the biggest advantage, is that she is going to be the younger, stronger fighter here. Now, she's only 24 years old. She's 8-0. She's only 24, and this is a big, big, big step up in competition for her. She fought Sijara Eubanks. She fought Lena Landsberg. She fought Tanya Evinger. And you know what? Lena Landsberg is 9-4. She's questionable herself. And I know people are high on her, but she's really not that great either. Tonya Evinger, now she's a veteran of the sport. She is a complete beast. However, Cyborg broke her, and she's almost 40. So she is a shell of what she used to be. So we've kind of got to take a grain of salt on the Tonya Evinger win as well. And then Sijara Eubanks is kind of just barely a notch down from Aspen Ladd. They're very, very similar fighters, but she's only 4-3. She's got 7 pro fights, and her best win is Roxanne Modafferi. And as much as I love Roxanne Modafferi, when we're talking about fighters that are potential title challengers, this ain't it, bro. This ain't it. Sijara Eubanks is just one notch slightly better than Sijara Eubanks, who is just one notch slightly better than Roxanne Modafferi. And Jermaine Duran to me is better than Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington, and I think those are interesting fights and matchups for someone like Aspen Ladd. I think Aspen Ladd has a strength advantage. I think she has a ground advantage. I think that she might be able to get the clinch and put Jermaine up against the cage. If she gets the takedown, maybe she can put Jermaine Durandamy out. Her ground and pound is something to behold. Aspen Ladd's ground and pound is beastly. But I don't know if she can do it here. Jermaine has really good footwork. She's really mobile. Holly had a hard time getting a hold of her and putting hands on her, and that's where I think that's the same game plan that Aspen Ladd is going to have. She's not a straight grappler like Pennington was, so she's going to have more striking opportunities, better chances to use her hands. But she's somewhere between Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington as far as skill sets are concerned. And holy crap, I want Aspen Ladd to win this thing so badly. And this is a huge reverse line movement situation, which I hate going against those. I mean, 66% of the money has come in on Jermaine, and she opened as a slight favorite, and she's been bet all the way up to plus 158. We can get plus 158 on JDR. And JDR just has such a slick striking game. She has an absolutely phenomenal striking game. She is a multiple-time champion outside of the UFC, not in MMA, but in striking, kind of like Holly Holm was. And she's adapted it really, really well to the UFC. The fact that she was able to defend all those takedowns from Raquel Pennington in November of 2018. The only reason that Aspen Ladd was able to get those takedowns over and over against Sijara Eubanks was because Eubanks' plan was to grapple. She's more of a grappler than she is a striker. Eubanks didn't look pretty on the feet against Sijara Eubanks. And she was able to get the takedown and put her on her back and threaten submissions, but only because Eubanks put herself in that position, and Eubanks is kind of a muscle monster and she gasses out. Jermaine Durandamy is a completely different machine. She's 5'9". She's going to have a massive height and reach advantage here. She's going to stay on the outside. She's going to have great footwork. Aspen Ladd is going to have a hard time closing the distance. And some of the takedowns that Eubanks went down on, those are not going to be good enough to get Jermaine Durandamy down. I am so sorry. I am so sorry because I love Aspen Ladd. But everybody's disrespecting the skill set of Jermaine Durandamy, and I cannot let my hatred for her blind me. We can get her at plus 158. I think that this is going to be a close fight. And everybody takes that step up and gets that first loss at some point in their career. And I think that this is going to be the one for Aspen Ladd. And even if this fight is close, we've talked about this before, this is massive amounts of value, getting plus 158 on Jermaine Durandamy, because if this fight is at all close, if this goes to the judges' scorecards, Jermaine knows how to squeak out these decision wins. And she's only 35. She's not overly active, so she's not taking a ton of damage, and she knows everything she's doing in there. She's not too old to bet on, and the value is on the line. I have to do it. we're going to take Germaine Durand-Demi at plus 158 for this fight. And I'm not happy about it. I'll be happy if we cash it. How's that? Something to keep in mind for this fight card is we've got so many picks that I would advise you chop your unit size down just a little bit. If you want to go between 60 and 80% of your normal unit size, just to make sure we're not spread too thin, this is a good fight card to do that. We are steering into the volatility here. There is a lot of volatility on these lines. We are playing a lot of dogs, and these are lots of evenly matched, evenly lined fights. I don't want anybody messaging me on Twitter telling me they went broke because they went hard on these fights. Let's practice bankroll management and make sure we're protecting ourselves, because that's what you got to do in this game. That will do it, diehards. Here we go. We have got action out the wazoo for this fight. We are bleeding degenerate from our noses. Let's run through these picks. So we are going to take Vince Morales. We've got him at plus 165. I know you can't get that line, and I do apologize, but I tweeted it out. We've got Jonathan Martinez as a slight dog to get it done at plus 128. We are going to roll with the damage at minus 105. Darren Elkins. We're going to lay the wood with my girl Juliana Pena and watch her wrestle her way to a decision. We will bet on Shame on Moraes, and we will lay the minus 120 on the man and hope he gets it done inside the distance. We will lay the wood on Marvin Vettori because we like being on the smart side of things at minus 150. We'll roll the dice on Josh Emmett at plus 151 and JDR at plus 158. Holy crap, we got there. Let's make some cash. Let's crush this weekend. Let's roll.